Knowledge is power, and power is everything in Magic the Gathering. And there are a few characters who represent this philosophy better than Tamiyo, the Moon Sage of Kamigawa. She's pristine, she's wise, and she was one of the greatest planeswalkers of all time in my opinion, but she also bore the burden of knowledge, a power that would, in great tragedy, eventually be her own undoing. I love Tamiyo. She is easily one of my favorite characters in Magic. I play her a lot in Commander. She's actually my most broken deck in all of Commander. I can drop a deck list if you're curious. I built her and I can't play a bad game with her. Every time, it's so easy to absolutely break the game and draw half your deck with this. And on top of just the gameplay, as someone who lives in Japan, I've always just really resonated hard with all of the Kamigawa characters and Kamigawa in general, but I really haven't taken a huge deep dive into her story before, and I'm really excited to do that with you today, so allow me to fill Tamiyo's shoes as I tell you her story. Tamiyo's unlimited potential. Tamiyo was a young student on Kamigawa, the very cool, kind of Neo-Tokyo, Japan-inspired plane. She was born in Oboro, a section of Kamigawa, and was born as a Soratami, aka part of the Moonfolk. Which is actually really cool because in Japanese, Soratami literally translates to Skyfolk, and it's pretty clear that she's inspired by the various ancient goddesses who descend from the moon in Japanese folklore. Now, if nerding out for one thing isn't enough for you like it is for me and you're also a big anime fan, you probably know about a handful of these characters like Kaguya-hime or Chang'e who have stories like these that have been adapted to stories like Naruto. Sorry to nerd out a little bit about this, I just thought it was a really cool thing to see in this lore specifically. Anyhow, let's keep rolling. One day, Tamiyo just happened upon a book that was not from her world, not even from her universe. How did that book get there? No clue. Planeswalking is all the rage, and surely someone accidentally just let it slip or something. Maybe Teferi or Liliana. They kind of seem like the type to read a bunch of books and then lose them in the process. Anyhow, one of these multi-planner books made its way into the possession of a young Tamiyo, bright-eyed and eager to learn. And maybe she was a little bit too eager, because literally just the idea of the multiverse and insane possibilities is what straight up caused her to awaken her own Planeswalker spark right then and there. Which, can I just be clear, is absolutely insane, because I've already made a handful of these videos on Planeswalkers on the channel so far, and pretty much every single one of them so far has awakened their spark in some absurd level of tragedy and emotional turmoil. But apparently, sometimes all you just need is a good book, I guess?
Knowledge. New bookshelves that I had to get installed to hold 2,000 new books that I bought.
And honestly, good for her, because she kind of deserves a little bit of a happy moment, I think. So, with these big anime stars in her eyes, her spark ignited, and those infinite possibilities she imagined became reality. She started wondering, plane shifting, experiencing new adventures, and studying the multiverse itself. In the process, storing all of her, stories in the Great Scrolls Tower of Oboro itself. Now, you might reasonably assume that this was just her greatest passion, but no. Despite all of this, there was something that actually grounded her, which was her loving husband, Genku, the future shaper, and their family. Hiroku, Rumio, their adoptive child Nashi, and a sort of pet, sort of child, Kitsune. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally really love these types of little details in Magic, because it's just so refreshing to see a character pretty much have a full family and story, and only one or two of these characters actually have cards, you know? I bet you didn't know that Genku was her husband, because I sure didn't at first, and Nashi the Nezumi is her child too? I don't know, maybe it's just me, but these are the things that I'm truly having a blast learning as I make these videos. Because all of these can give me more fun facts to share about at my Friday night Magic sessions, very much to my playgroup's very big dismay. Sorry, playgroup. The Moon Sage versus Innistrad's Nightmares. Next up, Tamiyo's journey would take her to the shadowy dark plane of Innistrad. And unlike some other visitors of Innistrad, Garrick, she wasn't there to slay monsters or destroy necromancers. She was really just there to watch and learn. More specifically, she was there to watch the moon.
The moon haunts you!
As you might imagine from a plane about werewolves, vampires, and probably a creature from the Black Lagoon, the moon on this plane was a bit of a problem. It was literally warping reality itself here. So Lady Tamiyo went and observed Innistrad across countless lunar cycles, and she kept documenting how the moon's different phases altered the entire plane. In a classic case of a moon person researching other moons, understandable. Innistrad's moon specifically though was all types of messed up. Werewolves didn't just transform, they spiraled into these nightmarish creatures. Vampires didn't merely hunger under the light of the moon, they surged with unnatural and violent tendencies. And to Tamiyo, Innistrad wasn't a horror story. Well, I mean, I guess it was a little bit, but she kind of looked at it as if it was like some sort of living puzzle. And to be fair, I would also want to solve some moon issues if I was a moonfolk too. It's like literally in her DNA to handle it, I think, I guess. That curiosity eventually led her to the astronomancer Genric inside his Moonstone Tower. Actually, not to be confused with Kethric's Moonrise Tower, which is another Wizards of the Coast property as well. And with Genric's aid, Tamiyo found some pivotal research and even some theories. Some moon theories. MatPat and I are very proud of you, Tamiyo, and their conclusion was very unsettling. You see, the moon on Innistrad wasn't just reflecting light, it was somehow exerting its will. And if that wasn't weird and bad enough, the Hell Vault also opened. Oh, sorry, my bad, you probably have no idea what that is, and man, that's totally fair if you don't. The name is pretty self-explanatory though. It's a big rock prison monolith thing on Innistrad created by Soren Markov, and inside of it existed the angel he created to slay demons and stuff. Avacyn, basically, right? She's awesome, super cool, and very powerful, and actually kind of in the background as Tamiyo was doing her moon stuff, Liliana, the baddie necromancer, destroyed the Hell Vault, releasing Avacyn and a bunch of demons back into Innistrad. Anyways, Tamiyo then proceeded to nerd out really hard, as anyone would do if an angel and, some demons appeared out of nowhere. She studied the patterns, as all of it suggested a sudden rebalancing of Innistrad's sort of, spiritual ecosystem, I guess, but that's a deal for another day. I mean, surely all of that would work itself out eventually, right? Tamiyo, the Great Host. So somewhere in the middle of all this Innistrad nonsense, Tamiyo went actually home for a moment to visit her family. She's a loyal mom, and we do respect it out here on Manu Crypt. You get a badge, good mom. And during that quiet interlude, a Johnny Goldmane visited her because you see Tamiyo, before all this Innistrad stuff, was forming a book club super group in the background basically. Composed, by the way, of some absolute top tier characters and friends. Narset, Elspeth, a Johnny Goldmane, Jace Beleren, Vraska, and possibly even Dovin Ban. The jury is still out on him for some reason. I don't know, don't ask me. If you're a Marvel Comics fan, this was like the Planeswalker equivalent of the Illuminati, I guess. Anyhow, one of her homies from book club, a Johnny, rolled through and was really depressed. Because you see, it turns out that their fellow story reader Elspeth was actually killed in hell on the plane of Theros. And so Tamiyo offered a Johnny sanctuary to, mourn and get back on his feet. Well, get back on his paws. The Chaos God in the Moon. Now, let's actually scoot back over to Innistrad for a moment, where things took a real dark turn. That badass Angel Avacyn, well, she suddenly came under some sort of madness, which actually kind of baffled Tamiyo. So Tamiyo does what she does best. She hit the book so that she could understand what was actually happening here. You see, killing Avacyn wasn't really an option for Tamiyo because Avacyn was serving as the plane's greatest shield from the demons and vampires and all the stuff. And seeing that Tamiyo, compared to some other characters we've talked on this channel, seems very reasonable, breaking Avacyn without having any answers felt kind of reckless to her. Still though, Jace Beleren convinced Tamiyo to confront Avacyn together because book clubbers do stick together. Now, the battle nearly killed them both, but they didn't need to worry because Avacyn's father and creator, Soren Markov, actually returned home and destroyed his own creation for Avacyn's sake. So great, problem solved, right? Nope, because right after all of this happened, a giant squid demon that feasts on universes itself appeared, my biggest crush in Magic the Gathering, Emrakul. Emrakul is an Eldrazi, a race of these eldritch-like nightmare creatures that exist outside of planes in the darkness of the blind eternities that consume entire planes. So imagine Emrakul is a woman, hungry for cookies, and the plains themselves are a bunch of cookie jars. So as you can imagine, Tamiyo reasonably was pretty scared of this. Jace vanished to assemble the Gatewatch, which is pretty much the X-Men of the Magic the Gathering universe, a super group of powerful planeswalkers, and they immediately realized the very, sobering truth. Emrakul cannot be defeated. Turns out our homie here was an Elder Titan, one of the 3 greatest Eldrazi, including Kozilek and also Ulamog. But it didn't change the fact that this keening mother needed to be contained. And Tamiyo then proposed the unthinkable, sealing this god creature inside the very thing that had brought her to Innistrad to begin with, the moon. Logically, Tamiyo had realized that the Hellvault's origins were tied to the moon and deduced in her Sherlock Holmes brain of hers that it would actually make a pretty sick prison. So together with Jace and Nissa, Tamiyo enacted this big spell. Go, super wizard friends, seal Cthulhu! And, it didn't work. Until Tamiyo, out of nowhere, pulled out an ironclad scroll and succeeded. Everything was saved. Yay! Yay! Not. You see, Gideon Jura offered Tamiyo a place amongst the Gatewatch, but she actually declined. Something seemed wrong. Things were not quite as they seemed, so she actually found her book buddy, Jace, and revealed a very dark truth to him. The final spell wasn't hers, it was Emrakul's. They had possessed Tamiyo and sealed themselves inside the moon, something that understandably Tamiyo and Jace and also me couldn't really comprehend. There was this one haunting question here: who was really in control the entire time? The Gatewatch or really the Eldrazi? The War of the Spark. Next up in our Moon Maiden's tale is the greatest conflict in the Magic multiverse, the War of the Spark. As you might have heard on this channel before, Nicol Bolas had planned to consume the sparks of many planeswalkers, becoming a, casual, omniscient, all-powerful god being, and naturally, that couldn't slide, so the homies rolled up to stop him once again. This time, Tamiyo included. And so, Tamiyo traveled with the Gatewatch to Ravnica, a really big and important city plane. Like, we're talking literally the top 3 most important places in the multiverse outside of Dominaria and maybe Zendikar, and her plan was pretty simple. 1, observe the final confrontation with Nicol Bolas, 2, record it, 3, get a sandwich, and 4, survive it. Ha! Didn't expect step number 4. Now, surprisingly, that plan failed pretty much immediately. Big Boy Bolas activated the Immortal Sun, a super cool artifact that he had a lot of history with, and trapped Tamiyo and every other planeswalker on the plane of Ravnica. Now, at first, for whatever reason, Tamiyo tried to remain neutral, documenting the war as it unfolded. That is what she came for after all, I guess, but she still had to lock in and throw some hands when the god Eternal Kefnet appeared, and Tamiyo laid the real smackdown. Brains and bronze over here. Hell yeah, that is why you are my goat. Thank you. So, Tamiyo helped strategize with Ravnica's leaders, lending insight and guidance like all good support players, and even after Chandra and Alar disabled the Immortal Sun, Tamiyo chose to stay, aiding the final push. And I am so proud of you for being a hero, Tamiyo, and recording history. The burden of knowledge. The climax of Tamiyo's story approaches near, and the curtains will soon fall as Tamiyo's greatest challenge awaited her: the Phyrexian invasion. The multiverse once again was in big danger as a race of living machines, the new Phyrexians, were on the precipice of invading the entire cosmos again. How, might you ask? Well, you should go ask Karn. Here's what happened. Kaito Shizuki, a powerful planeswalker, was pursuing Tamiyo's adopted son Nashi, which caused Tamiyo to lock in because nobody messes, of course, with her kids, right? And this woman just slayed a dragon god, and you went after her kid? You're kind of low-key crazy for that, Kaito. But it turns out that Kaito wasn't hunting Nashi at all, but rather Tezzeret and Jin Gitaxias, who were tied to the Phyrexians. Tamiyo then proposed an alliance with Kaito, and she urged patience and careful observation. And in response, Kaito, of course, did the right thing and rushed ahead anyways, nearly died, and had to be saved by the Wanderer, the Emperor of Kamigawa, one of my favorite characters also. You sense a theme? I really like Kamigawa. Now, the Wandering Emperor was also a former planeswalker and was really powerful, so that kind of tracks. The Emperor's Spark at this point though was all messed up, and so Tamiyo wanted to help her, so they found an object known as the Reality Chip, a pretty cool card I actually played for a long time in Modern in my Hammer Time deck. Really sleek, love the design, and that actually caused some classic sci-fi hijinks. Lots of fighting, kidnapping, car hot wiring, and more fighting ensued, and in the end, Tamiyo's worst fears came to light. Her power and her knowledge made her a prime target, of course, for the new Phyrexian queen, Elish Norn. Tamiyo was then captured by Tezzeret, she was delivered to Jin Gitaxias, and forcibly completed, becoming the first Phyrexian planeswalker. The process was pretty brutal and intimate. Tamiyo's flesh was cut open, her organs were removed and tossed aside, and in their place were living mechanical glands flushed in oily ichor. She no longer had a skeleton, instead it was replaced with a black metal frame, and Tamiyo was now no longer the great researcher and lover of knowledge, she was a machine. And I gotta say, good job making it through this description first of all, but to me also, it's very upsetting, man. I'll be real with you. Like, sometimes we lose characters we love for the sake of the plot, and it's really disturbing to have it done to one of my all-time favorites. Like, come on, like, poor Tamiyo didn't deserve this, Wizards of the Coast. I really miss her. Can we please get her back? Like, Tamiyo's new role was now, of course, being a weapon. So during the events of March of the Machine, Tamiyo was sent back to Kamigawa to conquer her own home. She corrupted Beseiju, the big tree, and confronted Kaito and Nashi, attempting to recruit them into Phyrexia. Which again, so messed up because that's her son. Dude, don't do this to me. But of course, Kaito and Nashi knew the truth that this was no longer their friend or mother. This was now the extended hand of Elish Norn, but they couldn't just strike her down. Luckily, my other favorite girl, the Wanderer, was a noble warrior and actually struck Tamiyo down in a swift strike. No pain, no pleasure, just execution for someone who needed it. Ugh. So Tamiyo was saved by her emperor, and that's the greatest thing she could have asked for, which is objectively the truth. I'm not adding any flavor into this. In her final moments, Tamiyo revealed this very thing to the Wanderer herself. Tamiyo was intentionally missing her own blows and silently begging the Wanderer to protect Nashi. Her love for her son actually allowed her to break through Elish Norn's total completion and thus pass on. And even though Tamiyo, yes, did actually die that day, her memory somewhat remained in the form of an iron sealed scroll containing a story unending, which was essentially a living spiritual record of Tamiyo herself, manifesting in the form of an enchantment creature with her pre-completion personality. Tamiyo unsealed the scroll right before allowing the Wanderer to strike her down, and Nashi carried her scroll across the multiverse. So Tamiyo and her son ventured together to Thunder Junction and later Duskmourn, where Tamiyo's memory was exploited by the demon Valgavoth. But she truly did love her son, and that is what let her push on. When the scroll was then recovered, she asked Nashi to let her go. He did let her go, releasing her memory into the Blind Eternities, where her story, at last, was allowed to lay to rest. And now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep. If you want to see more of the adventures on Innistrad, the nice and happy part of Tamiyo's story, check out this video right here where we talk all about Liliana, the great necromancer at the core of so many of the darkest events in Magic the Gathering. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel and you like these videos, please do that. Link to my Tamiyo deck in the description. I'm gonna cry now. Goodbye.